A very cold day in the Northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states, and that included snow showers and snow squalls that caused pileups and accidents in quite a few places. Also, we're going to start looking ahead to tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, where we've got severe weather risk. And of course, for the Northeast, the issue is Thursday, and also for the Mid Atlantic states, as the Storm Prediction Center still has an area of risk being indicated, and that extends from North Carolina on up to just south of New York City. And don't be shocked if this winds up getting extended further north as well as further south. All that and more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. They're 631-756-1125 is the telephone number. And even though the weather's not saying so, spring is on their minds and should be on yours too, because eventually you want to get some good looking mulch of different colors, whether you prefer red or black or brown or whatever color you like. They have it, and they've got plenty of it. So if you're a landscaper or a do-it-yourselfer, head over to Omni, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon on Long Island. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. And as only Joe Rayo can say it, the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Joe, I forgot yesterday to mention that yesterday was National Joe Day.
Oh, it was?
So happy National Joe Day a day later, but it was National Joe Day yesterday.
Nobody meant, I didn't see, not that I wasn't, I haven't really been paying too much attention to a Rage Book lately, but I didn't really see anybody make any mention of the fact that it was National Joe Day yesterday. But that's
Well,
fine.
I discovered it after we went off the air, and I did post on my. Are you calling it now Rage Book?
Rage Book, some people call it Fake Book. But I call it Rage Book.
I haven't even taken a look yet to see how many people have made comment about last night's wonderful Academy Award festivities. So,
they were
talking about
it before the show.
Rage Book. Talk about Rage Book.
I was watching. It's awfully hard, I guess, because it is Hollywood. It is awfully hard to fake a slap. So I was kind of looking tonight at some of the videos, and I don't know. I mean, sometimes you look at it from one angle and it looks staged. Then if you look at it on another angle, it doesn't look staged. I don't know. I didn't watch it. I haven't watched those
No,
things
I
in
don't watch it.
years. So anyway,
I haven't watched it either. I mean, the days of it being hosted by Johnny Carson, Bob Hope,
Thelma
even
Ritter.
Billy Crystal. Oprah, Uma,
Thelma Ritter actually did. There was a time in the 50s where they had a host in New York and they had a host in Hollywood, and
I did not know that.
Yes, they had her hosting in New York, and I remember seeing some old videos of old film, old film, now on video, showing that. But no matter, it was a non-event as far as I'm concerned. I didn't see any of the movies. I have a pile of them that SAG has sent me. I still haven't really looked at them, so it's WC. Who cares? Essentially, I will say, that just moving on to weather, that never underestimate. I always try to remember this time of year. The the ground warms up in a different way. And you look at the profile of the whole atmosphere. The upper air still thinks it's winter, and you can get really unstable air masses. You can get very unstable weather conditions in the atmosphere. And I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that I thought today would probably not see much in the way of snow showers, and yet there were quite a few of them on the radar. And I don't know if you saw the video of the pileup on I-81 in Pennsylvania, the
I
huge
did.
accident there. There was another one on 91 near New Haven, apparently, in Connecticut, from snow squalls that developed and moved on through. So don't underestimate the power of the March sun to take a very cold, unstable air mass and turn it into uh, something very active, even if it doesn't appear like it's going to happen, because that's kind of what happened today. How high did you get? Did you break 30 today?
We hit 30. I'm very surprised. Our low this morning was 20, 21, I think.
Right.
And I thought we were going to get down into the upper teens, and our high for about 3 seconds was 30. But more often than not, it was in the upper middle 20s for much of the day here. So it was, and you stepped outside into the wind, and it felt every bit like a midwinter day out there. And I have to tell you something. It'll be milder the next couple of days, but really, by the standards of where we should be at this time of the year, it's still going to be well below normal. We're going to have to wait until Thursday, and ironically, Thursday will actually turn out to be probably an unseasonably mild day with temperatures soaring into the 60s. So the thermometer is doing up and down calisthenics this week in terms of temperatures. It's rather amazing.
Yeah, and I mean that's all going to set up that severe weather risk on Thursday, no doubt. The Usually the bounces in temperatures this time of year happens a lot faster. There were a lot of record low high temperatures that were set today.
Yes,
I think
same right here in New York. Central Park set a record minimum high, if you want to call it that. I think it was 30 degrees. And
also
the record that they broke, Joe, the record that they broke was something like 180 or 190 years old or something like that. Something ridiculous. Or maybe it went back to the 1890s, so it's not 100 and some odd. It's something like 120, 130-year record. Regardless, it was a record that had stood for a good number of decades and now is no longer standing at Belvedere Castle in Central Park.
Yeah, Philadelphia made an interesting point. I saw one of their posts. My always Philadelphia, Mount Holly, made an interesting point on one of their posts showing the trajectory of this air mass, where you can go on NOAA. I got to find where it is, but they do a backwards trajectory of where a system has come from. And made the argument, and I think it's a pretty valid one, that this air mass was probably colder when you measure it in terms of, I guess, when you seasonally adjust it and you do, you look at a few other things that are going on, and certainly from the standpoint of the character of the system aloft, that this air mass was probably the coldest air mass of the whole winter, early spring season.
Yeah, yeah, I would. Well, I did not. Well, yeah, if you made the adjustments for the time of the year, yeah, you're probably
Right,
right. The coldest for me,
because the average high this
the
time of
coldest for me was that
go ahead, I'm sorry.
the coldest for me was that Saturday about a month and a half ago when I went out to plow with a temperature of an ambient air temperature of 9 degrees. I mean, that was quote the coldest, but again, adjusted for the time of the year, you're right. Because if we had this air mass in, let's say, late January, early February, no question in my mind that at Central Park, for example, even Central Park probably wouldn't have gotten out of the single digits and
Yeah,
probably would have fallen below zero. Just an amazingly cold air mass.
yeah.
And by the way, Alfred, excuse me, I just saw it, Shadow Rider on the chat board and put up the year 1893, and that was the year. That was the year of the minimum, the minimum high temperature at Central Park that we broke today. So that was a 7 and a 20, 22. That's a 129-year record that fell by the wayside today at Central Park for New York City.
Yeah, I was hoping to at least have the hazards map up with the current temperatures, but that site has been the Weather Service hazards map has been the interactive map that I'll pull up from time to time, where it plots all the obs and you can make it as wide or as tight as you'd like. Uh, they It's been down for the better part of the last 2 weeks. So when you go to that page, it says forbidden, which means that it's a 403 error. So there's something going on in their system that's blocking people from seeing what they should be seeing. So somebody needs to go in there and you know fix it. Sometimes it's security software that does it. So maybe that's part of the equation. I don't know. But no matter. We are trying to work our way to some warmer temperatures. It was a nice day here in Georgia, Joe, but even here, temperatures struggling in the daytime. I mean, I didn't get much above the low 50s today, even though we had blue skies and sunshine all day long. Still had a bit of a gusty wind to deal with, but it was still a sunny day. And I guess even from New York standards, if it winds up with the numbers I had today, it would be below normal even there. So, but we're going to warm up tomorrow because you can already see on the satellite loop what's going on back in Texas and points west, and that's energy with an upper trough that is swinging eastward, and that is going to cause the first of 3 days of increasing severe weather risk. Meanwhile, on the satellite in the northeast, this morning, Joe, was clear, and again, the instability, a lot of clouds, like these streamers coming going from west to east on the satellite today, coming with just the moisture, I guess, off the Great Lakes. It was that in the upper low. The upper trough was just enough to trigger off a few more snow showers, but that should start to finally pull out during tonight, I would think.
Yes, we would hope so. But again, it's going to be a slow pulling out, Joe, because the temperatures over the next couple of days are still going to be below seasonal normals. Normal now is somewhere in the low to mid 50s. And here in the Hudson Valley, we're going to be in the 40s at best tomorrow and again on Wednesday. And then we hop, skip, and jump over the normal and go to above normal as we get into Thursday. And that warming trend may very well set the stage for a bout of severe weather here late on Thursday or maybe Thursday night.
Yep. Meanwhile, on the radar, and I might as well give it a quick refresh. This was from, I'd say, about 2 hours ago. Let me just take a look at the timestamp here because this is from 2200. So that was from 6 o'clock. So about an hour and a half ago, and we'll see what it's doing now. But you can still see these streamers coming in off of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario in and around Buffalo. Most of this stuff is on the light side, and like looks like popcorn stuff over New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania, moving southeastward and down into the Delmarva Peninsula that produced a few flurries, and something a little bit more substantial up in down East Maine. We'll give it a refresh and notice, by the way, there is a warm front that's trying to set up here, Joe. There's some precip aloft in western Kentucky, southern Indiana, western Illinois. I'm starting to wonder if this front comes through late Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning, whether it might be cold enough for maybe some wet snow or some sleet as the warm front tries to go by. Not a lot, obviously, but just like maybe a narrow band of it that moves on through late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, we've been alluding to that. I've been alluding to that for the well going back to late last week. Forecast for Wednesday: chance of snow showers or wet snow or some kind of wet precipitation, wet snow in the early part of the day, and then changing over to just plain rain or showers by Wednesday afternoon. So yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and you can see all the precip that's back out in the west, particularly from west of the Rockies to the west coast, as energy is moving inland in California and into the southwest, and that's all going to get ejected eastward, which is what the Storm Prediction Center is watching. Now, there's no severe weather risk tonight, but here's the setup for tomorrow. We've got a slight risk throughout much of central and north central Texas, a good chunk of the eastern half of Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, western Missouri, westernmost Arkansas, poking up into southwest Iowa is the slight risk. And of course, the marginal risk goes a bit further north, and also on the south side of that, a bit further to the south. And we do have a 5% tornado risk in north central Texas that probably includes the Dallas Fort Worth area on up into Oklahoma, also probably covering Oklahoma City, and the 2% risk pushing up into Kansas. Now, on the next day, now this is going to be Wednesday into Thursday morning. And here we have what could be maybe a regional outbreak potential here. The Storm Prediction Center, as they've had for several days now from the long range, from when they had this in the long range period, They have an enhanced risk for severe weather in eastern Louisiana, just about all of Mississippi except the extreme north and extreme south, western Alabama. The marginal risk, I'm on the edge of the marginal risk, and just to the east of me is the actual general thunderstorm line. So it cuts off very sharply, and the slight risk pushing up into southern Illinois. Now for Thursday, SPC has not changed this, but I'm really looking forward to tomorrow morning, Joe, for the when day 4 becomes day 3, because I'm going to be very interested to see how far north they take the marginal risk and maybe even take the slight risk further to the north and also further to the south. I'm going to be very curious to see what they do with this for Thursday, considering that the cold air is taking longer to get out, and the next system coming in, the warm air is going to be coming up the coast in a bit of a rush. So I would think that that might open the door for a bit more widespread severe weather activity. But again, I'll defer to them and I'll see what they do uh, when they update it tomorrow morning.
Well, Bill Goodman, when I posted this yesterday on Facebook, I pointed out that Thursday night here might be nasty because, as we've been talking the last couple of days, Joe, it's quite unusual to see the Storm Prediction Center target a region along the Atlantic coast for possible severe weather. Yesterday was 5 days out. Today it's 4 days out. The yellow zone is indicating or highlighting a 15% probability for severe weather, reaching as far north as central and north central New Jersey, just to the south of New York City, likely associated with a cold frontal passage that's expected during the overnight hours Thursday night into Friday morning. And Bill Goodman, our dear friend from the National Weather Service in Upton, says SPC track record for severe thunderstorm risk so far this year has been to trend into the New York metro area at the last minute. So he said, you're on to something there, Joe. I wrote back to Bill saying, thanks, Bill, coming from a reputable NWS forecaster such as yourself. That's a nice compliment. And he wrote back,
I can
Bill Goodman
imagine.
wrote back, moi, moi. He said, thank you, but au contraire, you've been at this game longer. I defer to you. I learned something, a little something every time I watch the Joe and Joe show. Uh, uh, and he says, I learned.
I don't know
He said,
whether to
not
be
to get lost.
I don't know whether to be happy about that or fearful.
Huh. He said, not to get lost in the weeds or so to believe my own BS quite so much. And then he adds, and Honeymooners trivia, forget it. I pale by comparison because we're both a member of the Honeymooners Facebook page and we're big Honeymooner fans. So I thank Bill for that. I thank him for his insight about if he's in your camp, Joe, by saying that he believes that the trend into the New York metro area will come at the last minute. So maybe not necessarily tomorrow, but maybe on Wednesday or Thursday, they'll put us in slight chance or slight risk, or maybe even, well, at the very least, marginal risk. But we'll see how this all plays out for later on in the week.
Well, tomorrow they're going to add the marginal risk zone when it goes into the day 3. So at
Well, if
least
that
uh,
unless they have an exceedingly tight gradient between slight and marginal, we'll be certainly in the marginal area if that be the case
I would
for
think.
Thursday.
I would think. And the dynamics, the dynamics with this, as we pointed out yesterday, are actually pretty good, pretty decent uh, in terms of strength. With the upper trough swinging around and going negative, and the at least from the standpoint of what the GFS showed at 700 millibars, there's some really. I always like to look at the jet streaks on the 700 millibar map, and there was quite a few of them with 50 and 60 knot winds, because oftentimes that mixes down, and in thunderstorms, and sometimes if they're if it's blotchy, you could make an argument that there could be even pockets where there might even be rotation. But somebody asked me about that yesterday, and I said, and I think it makes sense. From the standpoint of starting to determine whether there's going to be tornado risk, you really need to sort of wait until you get to at least Wednesday's dayside guidance before you
Yeah.
because you got to really see that's such a small that's such a small scale type system that uh, sometimes the global model, you're not going to get a whole lot of insight from the global models. So you sort of guess when the dynamics are strong enough, but you really want to wait till the day before so you can see how the mesoscale models handle situations with regards to whether there could be rotation and some potential for a tornado. But we'll see what they do tomorrow.
Tim Tim Veltman was asking, in fact, yesterday after I had posted about that, and after we had discussed this yesterday about the severe weather threat on Thursday. He says, how come there's a lot of omega on the F gen? Earlier on Wednesday, you could make out where the warm front is. He says, how come there was so much for that, and there's not much for this potential threat later Thursday? And I pointed out that with the Wednesday threat, with the actual warm front, you're having a constant overrunning type pattern of warm air going over the top of this dome of chilly air, cold air, to produce the area of cloud and precipitation. Whereas what we're relying on for late Thursday and Thursday evening is the approach of a cold front, and that is diurnally connected. In other words, this is stuff that's going to probably pop up or build up during the latter part of the day, Thursday and into Thursday night. And so far, the models just simply don't handle, you know, activity like that this far out. But I'm sure that when we get to Wednesday or Thursday, we're going to see on the FGen probably maybe a narrow, but still, albeit there, a strip of omega strip of energy that'll be approaching from the west with that approaching front and setting the stage and indicating, the threat for possible thunderstorms here later Thursday and Thursday night. Tom Contino on the chat board asking Joe Rayo, does the foose, and he spelled foose wrong. He spelled it Foose. It's not spelled that way, Tom. It's Fous. What does the foose show? What the thickness value is? Tom, at 2 o'clock this afternoon, according to the NAM foose, the thickness over New York, and this is why, Joe, you talk about instability with a strong March sun.
Oh
The
God,
thickness
yes.
over New York by the foose was indicated to be 506.
Wow.
506
I don't
this
think I don't
afternoon.
think we got that.
And
I don't think we got that low all winter on the thickness.
that's crazy. And William Huber asked Joe R., where did this cold air mass come from? Siberia, Greenland? Actually, it started somewhere in the vicinity of Great Slave Lake, took a track or was advected south and eastward over James Bay in southern Canada. And then when it got past James Bay, it turned and went straight from north to south, aiming right toward the New York metropolitan area. And as we have said time and time again, here in the tri state area, our coldest weather, the coldest temperatures we ever see is when we get a straight northerly component of the wind, the upper level winds, and that's where they were coming from today, straight down from the north, right down Interstate 87, north of Montreal, and somewhere north and west of Montreal, turning to the northwest, again over James Bay. And again, that air originated somewhere in the vicinity of Great Slave Lake in north central Canada. So that is cold air.
Oh, clearly, clearly cold air. And as I said earlier, if you go to the weather services, well, Mount Holly's, I'm sure they probably put it on Twitter too. So if you look on their Twitter feed or if you look on their Facebook feed, I'll see if I can find the map a little bit later on. But there's a weather service, what they refer to as a backward trajectory, so they can go back and look to see where it came from. And as Joe described, I mean, it basically came out of those regions, those nether regions, up in the Arctic through northwest Canada, then down into through Hudson Bay and points southeast. Yeah, uh, going back to what Philadelphia Mount Holly said earlier, I think you really can make a case for the fact that this was certainly colder, technically, when you seasonally adjust it. This was definitely colder than any air mass that we saw during the wintertime. So let's look at the ramifications of all this cold air, because you got to figure there's going to be a some noise, and certainly when you look at the dynamics of the next system, this deep low that comes out of Colorado, it's in the mid 980s in terms of central pressure. So Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, this is the GFS uh, depiction of the radar. Now, whichever model you use, it's probably not going to do justice to what it really looks like. However, Notice that by Wednesday morning, there's a healthy looking squall line in eastern Texas and western Arkansas, and then it gets very strong as it moves across Arkansas and Louisiana and through the state of Mississippi. I mean, that's 6 hours of movement there, Joe. It goes from just east of Little Rock. The squall line is east of Little Rock at 2 p.m. and by 8 p.m. it's on the Alabama state line. So that's moving at a pretty good clip here through Mississippi. I would not be shocked to see a lot of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes get produced out of this. This looks like a rather dynamic system here, and the line actually extends all the way up into western Kentucky and into southern Indiana. It holds up during the overnight as it approaches me, and then it starts to fall apart by the time we get to Thursday morning. I've noticed that a lot of thunderstorms tend to do that. Uh, I noticed that last year, and I'm noticing it again now. That these
You know
strong,
why, Joe?
because I'm here.
You know what?
And
You know
I'm
why?
okay with it. I'm okay with it.
The thunderstorms die out or quickly scatter when they approach your house because they're afraid of getting barked at by
Yes,
JJ.
that's true. That's quite true. And then during the day on Thursday, the models just seems to be. And again, I would use this with a big grain of salt because it never seems to get what the radar does wind up looking like when we get to reality here, especially on the global models. It starts to, squall lines tend to disappear, reappear, or get broken up. So this almost looks like a broken line of showers with a few embedded thunderstorms, and maybe that's what it'll be. But I have a suspicion that it's probably going to be a bit more formidable as it moves eastward. And then, of course, we've got another shot of colder air coming in behind it for Friday into the weekend. Although, Mr. Rayo, I don't. This is not going to be this air mass that follows it. While it will be chilly and will take temperatures below average, I don't think it's going to be anything like what we've just seen for yesterday, today, into tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't. Well, that we'll see how things pan out. We don't really, never say definite in this game.
No, I know,
When you
but
think, just when you think,
you're not going to get to a 510. You're not going to get to a 506 thickness this time around during next
no,
weekend.
no,
You
no. The next air mass, it's going to be chilly, it's going to be cold, but it's not going to be 506 thickness. That is for sure. Interestingly, the upper levels were 506, but the low levels, the T1 boundary temperatures, actually continued to fall. In fact, we're supposedly at our lowest overnight tonight. The thickness has already climbed to past like 510 by 2 a.m., but the low levels of the atmosphere bottom out at the T1, at least at LaGuardia, at -6 Celsius by 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. No matter which way you look at it, this is a very cold air mass indeed. And I mean, we had a similar cold air mass like this 40 years ago, setting us up or setting the stage for that blizzard on April 6, 1982. I mean, if you're going to get one, you're going to need an air mass like this at this time of the year. And unfortunately for all the snow lovers out there, well, maybe not so unfortunate if you got your car smashed up in that pileup on I-81 in Pennsylvania or I-91 near New Haven or whatever, because there was certainly just enough snow for that. But if you were hoping for some kind of a major nor'easter or major late season system, we have the cold, but we just don't have the storm.
correct. Now I was just looking at the NAM, which is not quite as impressive as the GFS for Tuesday night into Wednesday through Wednesday night into early Thursday. It's got a squall line, but it's not quite as well developed as the GFS has. But I just want to take a look at what it has for Thursday afternoon as far as the upper air setup is concerned. And naturally, I pulled up the wrong map. I actually pulled up the 700 millibar F gen, believe it or not. And there's some pockets of it, but there's not an impressive north-south line. But then again, as you said earlier, when we get there, we might see the model pick up on it a bit better. Let's see if I can get that vorticity wind. That's the one I really wanted to look at.
Joe, you haven't shown the primitive equation, the PE model lately.
Yeah, exactly. They're
Or the bus or the
yeah,
bustrotropic.
I don't those aren't there anymore. They don't exist.
I know they are.
Oh,
They died a miserable death about 45 years ago.
well, yes, they certainly did. Yeah, I'm looking at the NAM has those jet streaks Thursday afternoon from upstate New York, eastern PA through central Virginia, and it's got a couple of really dark spots in South Carolina down into southern Georgia. So that's that kind of argues. I'm just looking at 21 at 5 o'clock. It's right near the coast, so I'm at least from the standpoint of what's being shown aloft, you got to make the argument that there'll be a healthy looking line of showers and thunderstorms later Thursday into Thursday evening, and then of course you got that whole upper trough that's going to have to swing through. I just want to really quick just give a look at the long range to see where we're going with all of this. As I noticed by the 12Z run, Joe. Oh, by the way, should mention Johnny Quest up in the mountains of West Virginia. I think he said he had half a foot of snow on Saturday night.
Wow.
Well, he's at 3,000 feet,
Wow.
and Chuck Cardillo had some pretty decent snowfall there up in the Catskills at also at about 3,000 feet. So everybody, if you're elevation this time of year is a big deal. So if you are in an elevated area, you can still wind up with a fair amount of snowfall uh, well into the first half of April, and maybe even sometimes beyond that. All right, come on. This circle of death issue that I keep dealing with these weather service sites and also with tropical tidbits is driving me crazy. It's nothing to do with them. It's more it's the cable line here, which is it's just awful. Um, okay, I want the height anomaly. All right, come on, load it up. All right, so this is the trough, the upper trough at the end of the week. We've got kind of a blocky look there across the North Atlantic and through the Arctic region. And there's another trough dropping into the northern plains behind it. Yes, I'm waiting. There we go. Hopefully that does the trick. So that trough's going to move in and lift out. Another short wave will approach on Sunday with a weaker system, and then that pulls out. Then we get another deep trough that drops from the northern plains into West Texas so now we're into the week of the Monday, April 4th, and that lifts up. There was a deep trough on the 12Z run at the end of the period, Joe. It was the whole upper low just drops down into Pennsylvania and New Jersey. A really cold upper feature. I mean, it's not doing that now on this run, but it certainly was lending the argument that Canada was still going to be feeding some leftover cold air, at least going into the middle part of April. But this does not look, if you look at this, if you just take a flavor of the overall pattern, and if you're thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we had 4 or 5 days of sunshine with temperatures in the 70s? That ain't happening, folks. I can tell you
No,
that much.
it's
That
not.
is not going to happen. You're going to have the odd day here and there, like we are this week, which will be Thursday. And then when those temperatures do shoot up, there's a cold front that's going to be nearby to probably trigger off some showers and storms. And I think that's probably going to be the signature for the first half of the month of April, judging from the way the upper pattern is.
Yep, I agree with you. This is I don't know if you want to call it a progressive pattern, a backward spring. I know we were teased a couple of times with temperatures that went well up into the 70s, and everybody got excited about that, and everybody said, "All right, time to put away thoughts about winter." And now here, look what we're stuck with. We're stuck with a pattern that looks more like it's going to be below normal or near below normal as opposed to above normal. And I think, Joe, if I remember correctly, on some of those progs from Climate Prediction Center, they were actually suggesting about this time into April that it was going to warm up quite nicely. I really don't see it.
No, I don't see it either. It's yeah, you're not going to get it when you keep getting these upper lows that are dropping down out of Canada. Until that relaxes, it's going to be very hard to warm up for more than a day or two at most. At most, um,
Right.
it's a volatile. Somebody asked me about this with respect to springs in the Northeast, and I said, you know what, you really just have to just wait till mid-May. You just write off you write off March to mid-May because there's just too much that can happen. It's very rare that you get decent stretches of weather in that 2 month time frame. The ocean is too cold, the land is warming up too fast, and you're always in some kind of a battle zone. You're still getting air masses coming down out of Canada. After mid-May, things settle down a little bit. Uh, but I've always felt that the spring was the worst. I always disliked the spring. I always thought it was the toughest time of year to forecast, and I stand by that. And also from the standpoint of the weather in the Northeast and down into at least into the coastal areas of the Mid-Atlantic states, it's just not a nice time of year. It just isn't.
Incidentally, I said when you were talking before, I did step away from the camera for a moment. My throat was getting kind of, I wouldn't say clogged, but tightened up. So I went to unloosen things down there by getting what will certainly do that, and that is
Oh,
V8,
V8.
but not regular V8 though. This is, I don't know how many of you ever had this, spicy hot
Oh my
V8.
God.
And I can tell you that I can tell you that Renata hates this. She does not touch this stuff. I'm the only one here who drinks V8, and it's in the refrigerator over there. So, like I said, when I felt like I was a little clogging up a little bit in the throat, I said, I know something will open it up real fast. Spicy hot V8.
Yes.
So
Well,
it works.
I'm gonna get. I want to show you something, and I want to show everybody something with regards to Cleopatra. So here is Cleopatra, my Venus flytrap, and she might be okay. So what she does is if you I got to bring it a little closer to the camera, but you'll notice the flowers that are on the base of the plant here, they're closed. So when they are open, Cleopatra is trying to lure flies or insects because the inside of the flower looks like raw meat. Okay, and
Right.
she traps them. However, after there are times when Cleopatra actually wants the insects to come, and that's to pollinate her. So she closes her traps and produces flowers, like real flowers. These are not going to eat the flies. These are just genuine flowers that she's looking to get uh, the insects to come and pollinate her. So she produced this really beautiful flower. So I just wanted to show. I'm very proud of her. And she's got one. Half a dozen. There's half a dozen buds up there that have a flower for flowers that haven't opened up yet. So I'm gonna put her back. She's uh, she's
Is
in.
this your imitation of Morticia?
Yes, exactly. And I have three baby Venus flytraps in another pot. When they get big enough, they're going to get transplanted into their own little homes. They're kind of fun to watch. They grew that stem with the flower grew almost overnight. It's amazing how quickly that stem. From day to day, I would come out and it would be an inch taller every day.
Now, if you stuck your finger there, would it actually close up on the finger?
I if I tr- there are very minute hairs inside the flower, and when you when you touch when an insect touches one of those little hairs,
Yeah.
it starts a clock, and it has to touch another hair within 20 seconds. It has 20 seconds, and if it touches a second hair within that 20-second time, then the trap would spring shut.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's very
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
they're interesting plants. very interesting plants.
Well, I just got a notice here that the sun let out with an M4 solar flare. That's a pretty good one. For all of you out there who would like to see stuff mayhem like radio communications silenced, or the chance of seeing a great display of the aurora borealis, this this might do it, only because it was like right in the middle of the sun, and the stuff that shoots out from these flares, the subatomic particles, is more or less aimed right at the Earth. So we may see them get attracted by the Earth's magnetic poles. But really, we need an X flare. That's an indication of a really big flare. This is a moderately large flare. But Joe, it's a moot point, because it usually takes about 2 or 3 days for these particles to come toward Earth and do their thing. And if that happens, it's not going to matter to me, because if it comes 2 or 3 days later, that's going to be when we're anticipating thunderstorms. So
Yeah.
we wouldn't see any northern lights
And you
displays
know what?
if there was.
How many times have we sat through the fact that this big solar storm and all the rest of it, and
Right.
it for one reason or another it winds up fizzling before it gets here. So, um, not that I'm playing it
It's
to,
really got to be.
it's got to be
I got to tell
perfect.
you, you talk about the tornado, the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. Um, making forecasts for major outbreaks and tornadoes and things. They've gotten pretty good over the years. But the fellows at the Space Environment Center in Colorado, they're no better than they were, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago, in forecasting and projections for you know geomagnetic storms and aurora activity. And I mean, they take what are best described as educated guesses, and every once in a while they'll hit. But more often than not, as you just said, Joe, you see mentioned on television or radio, so watch out for the big display of northern lights, and nothing happens.
Yeah,
And yeah, I don't
exactly.
understand why, but that's it's a tough nut to crack. Two people on the hitting super chats: Leon Probisky, and Leon has I guess you can call it, looks like a happy fox, the
Or a,
happy fox,
or
like
a,
smiling at you,
yeah, or a panda.
or a panda or whatever. And Bill Rogers, who says, may I suggest a gardening with Chiavi segment? Heard Joe said he planted 400 tulips.
I did.
Did you?
Years ago, I used to play every autumn. I would order them wholesale from the Van Borgendine. I think they used to have a place on Long Island, but they're like a big wholesaler of bulbs to all the gardening centers. And I don't know if that's still the case now, but anyway, uh, I used to buy 400 or 500 tulips, or the tulips slash daffodils, and I would plant them in the fall, all around my front yard, and they would bloom in the spring. When my daughter got married, my entire front of my house was covered in tulips, and it really was
Oh,
quite pretty. But like anything, as you get older, the work to do the same amount, to put in the same amount, costs more, and takes a bigger toll on you. So I haven't done that in years, but I used to love putting bulbs down and watching them come up in the springtime. And I would get all these different exotic ones, and some of them would time to bloom in late March, early April, and then there were the mid cycle blooms during April, and then there's another hybrid that used to bloom late April and into May. So I would stagger them. So this way there was always something going on somewhere. It really looked nice over the years. I got to find those pictures. This was in the days before telephones. So um, uh, cell phones with cameras. So I have to actually find actual pictures of them somewhere. But I'm sure they're around. But yeah, I used to do that. I used to love. I love to go. I love to grow things. Would you like to see rosemary?
Rosemary?
Yes.
Is that Cleopatra's sister?
Well, she has several. Now, Rosemary wasn't well, but I've nursed her back to health, and this is Rosemary, and she's doubled in size. And do you know what kind of plant this is, Joe?
Rosemary is what is a
It's a
something
her.
you eat.
It's an herb.
It's an herb.
Yes, she seasons my
Now all
chick.
you have to get is now
She's
where do you have your peaches stored? Because then you'll have peaches and herb.
right, exactly. No, she seasons my poultry, and she does it so well. And
Oh, lovely.
wait. Let me show you Sage.
Oh, that was the name, by the way, of Sylvester Stallone had his son, but he passed away a couple of years ago. Sage Stallone.
Right. This is Sage. She too was happy, but I brought her back. You know, she loves the night. She's a little hooked on nitrogen though. You know, so that's I gotta watch her. She gets too hooked on nitrogen, but she's doing quite well, and she also seasons my meat.
Okay.
Okay, just letting you
Um,
know there.
no comment there. Uh, uh,
I watch too much Sue
uh,
Ann Nivens.
yes, I'm sure you do.
So anyway, those are just a couple of my plant endeavors that I have. But like I said, I just proud of Cleopatra. So that's it. So I guess we'll just have to wait till tomorrow.